The Cleveland Cavaliers and Orlando Magic are two teams with very different styles. And as the old adage goes, styles make fights. But with that said, they have a lot in common. They both ranked in the NBA's top 10 defensively and towards the lower half offensively. According to NBA.com's Steve Ashburner, Orlando had a 21-2 record when holding opponents under 100 points, while Cleveland didn't lose at all when doing so, going 14-0 when holding their opponent under 100. Both also struggled with failing to score 100 or more, with the Magic going 2-12 and the Cavs going 1 of 9 respectively in that regard. This has the potential to be one of the most compelling series of the first round, or a complete snooze fest going in either direction. That's what makes the 4-5 matchup such a mystery from year to year. Both teams have strengths that they can lean on, and both have obvious weaknesses that can be exploited. With that in mind, let's break down just how the Cavaliers can win this series. The tail of the tape. The Orlando Magic and Cleveland Cavaliers get the job done in different ways. After relying heavily upon scoring the bulk of their points in the painted area in each of the past 5 seasons, the Cavaliers have switched things up in a major way, now having the most balanced offense that they've had since the second post-LeBron era began. They finished the 2023-24 regular season scoring 44.5% of their points in the paint. That ranked 13th in the NBA, their first time outside of the top 10 since the 2018-19 campaign. In fact, they are scoring just 50.2% of their total points on 2-point field goals. That ranks 20th. However, the biggest change has been their newfound ability to space the floor. A whopping 36% of their points are coming via the 3-point shot, good enough for 7th league-wide. Now, while they may be middle of the pack in terms of efficiency, making 36.7% of those, they are knocking down the NBA's 7th most triples per game at 13.5 trays per contest. It is clear that they value the triple, and rightfully so. All of that being said, this is an offense that ranks 20th at just 112.6 points per game. They are not offensive juggernauts. They have just changed their offensive philosophy. The Magic, on the other hand, score 53.3% of their points on 2-point field goals, 8th most in the association, while ranking dead last in points scored off of 3-point field goals at 29.9%. They attempt the league's second fewest triples at 31.3 per game and make the fewest at just 11. They don't take many triples and they don't make many triples. To top it all off, they complete just 35.2% of those shots, good for 24th league-wide. That is not where their bread is buttered, and they know it. What this Magic team does do well, however, is score in the painted area. Much like the Cavs of yesteryear, Orlando emphasizes attacking the opponent inside, using their immense size to their advantage. They score 51.8 points per game in the paint. They play with a slow, deliberate pace, ranking 27th in the NBA in that regard. Now, here are a few keys to victory. Limit turnovers, especially self-inflicted ones. If it's one thing this Cavaliers team has struggled with this season, it's turning the ball over. Everyone has been guilty, some more than others. Now I'm looking at you, Darius Garland. Jokes aside, you cannot turn the ball over against this Magic team. They are among the league's best at capitalizing on your mistakes. They finished the 2023-24 season ranked 2nd in points off turnovers, turning their opponent's miscues into 18.6 points per game. Turning the ball over against them is basically handing them free points. Conversely, Cleveland is also very good at turning their opponent's giveaways into points, scoring 16.6 points off of these, which happens to rank 12th. The problem is, the Cavs turn the ball over a fairly high amount as well, roughly 13.6 per game. That's no bueno, especially against an Orlando Magic team that happens to rank 5th in steals, swiping the ball 8.6 times per game. Jalen Suggs leads the way with 1.4 per game, with 2 others among the top 100 league-wide. Cleveland must take care of the ball. It's a must in this series. Number 2. Attack the glass and limit second chance opportunities. On the surface, Orlando does not appear to be a great rebounding team. They rank 25th in overall rebounds per game. However, if you dig a little deeper, you'll see that this may not be the case. They actually have the NBA's 4th best rebound percentage at 51.5%. Orlando is adept at ending teams' possessions. They rank 2nd in defensive rebounding percentage, pulling down a staggering 73.7% of those. They can be somewhat dangerous on the offensive glass, where they rank 15th, pulling down 10.5 offensive rebounds per game. Orlando ended the season ranked 11th in second chance points. They can make you pay for not ending possessions. This is an area that Cleveland struggled mightily in during last year's series against the Knicks. Their inability to pull down defensive boards, especially after solid defensive stops, was key to their own undoing. It kicked off a whole slew of offseason narratives surrounding both Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, mostly revolving around them being soft. And while players like the recently acquired Marcus Morris and Tristan Thompson may not be initially included in JB Bickerstaff's playoff rotation, they could certainly play a role here if the starting duo of Mobley and Allen or even George Niang begin to struggle in this regard. But here's the thing, it's not something that solely falls upon the bigs. The backcourt duo of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell must get involved, so too must Max Strus. They have to box out and provide good positioning to keep Orlando from reaping the possible reward of a second chance opportunity. Cleveland has to keep Orlando off the glass in this matchup. They managed to win the battle of the boards 3 out of the 4 times the two met during the regular season series. There was no one singular threat among Orlando's deep roster in this regard. Their leading rebounder is Okoro, who averages just 6.9 boards per contest. That said, Cleveland is well aware of just how much rebounding can affect the outcome of a series and needs to do everything within its power to prioritize it. Lock down the painted area. As previously mentioned, the Orlando Magic dominate within the painted area, where they ranked 8th in that category this season, scoring 51.8 points per game in that regard. Orlando features 5 players ranked within the top 150 in points in the paint. Mo Wagner is 11th in paint points off the bench with 7.2. Markelle Fultz contributes 6, and Wendell Carter Jr. gives them 5.5, but this really boils down to the two-headed monster that is Okoro and Franz Wagner. Both rank within the top 50 in paint points. Franz in particular has been a force all season long down low. He not only leads his team in that category, but also ranks 16th in the entire NBA with 11.6 of his points coming that way. Franz is truly a versatile player, and we will dig deeper into it further down the line, but his ability to drive the basketball is key here. Wagner's 11.7 drives per game ranked 10th among all forwards this season. He was damn efficient with them as well, taking 6.4 shots when driving and making 3.4 of them per game, ranking 6th respectively in both areas among qualifying forwards. Okoro is coming off a stellar sophomore year that saw him put up averages of 22.6 points per game, 6.9 rebounds, and 5.4 assists. He was a force of nature for Orlando this season, scoring on opponents in a multitude of ways, while one of his biggest weapons is his ability to put the ball on the floor and drive towards the cup.
That's a good point. Just stoned Halliburton on that one.
And Herro, 2 more. And the foul.
That's so nice.
And he has powered the Nets to a big-time lead. Banchero gets past. Oh, watch your head. Paolo Banchero with a little extra force.
He is a very good driver of the basketball. The scouting report suggests that when he dribbles with his left hand or when he drives left, he typically looks for the step back. When he heads towards the right, he's looking to attack the basket. He hasn't been nearly as efficient as Wagner this season, but his 12.7 drives per game ranked 9th among forwards. He gets dribble penetration and as a result can draw a metric ton of contact. When driving the ball, he attempts 3.2 free throws per game, 5th most among forwards and 8th most among all players. He is also 11th in the NBA in free throw attempts per game overall, with 7 taken per outing. At 6'10", Paolo Banchero can shoot over you or he can body himself past you. He will get his. The key is to limit the ancillary pieces surrounding him. If Cleveland is to win this series, it will begin with limiting Orlando's paint touches, cutting off their driving lanes, and by forcing them to do something they are clearly uncomfortable with doing, shooting from the perimeter. Those ancillary pieces are not world beaters from 3-point range. No one strikes fear from this group. Jalen Suggs at 39.7% on 5.1 attempts per game was probably their best shooter during the regular season. He may command a solid level of defensive attention when Paolo, Franz, or another ball handler elects to drive and kick, but outside of Suggs, Cleveland will likely be comfortable forcing Orlando to prove it can make them pay for clogging the paint. The Magic shot 58.7% in the paint, but had an effective field goal percentage of 49.5% on shots from outside the paint. That 9.2% was the league's biggest such differential. Their lack of perimeter shooting was essentially why they ranked in the bottom 10 offensively for the 11th straight season. The Cavs, on the other hand, remain one of the best teams at defending the paint. They were one of 3 teams, along with the Celtics and Thunder, that ranked in the top 10 in both opponent field goal percentage in the paint at 55.1%, which was 5th, and the lowest percentage of the opponent's shots that came in the paint. Honestly, for this matchup, they might want to take a page out of New York's book and blitz Paolo or Franz whenever they touch the ball. Everyone has a role to play, as it will be a collective effort, but this begins and ends with the front court duo of Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, in my opinion. As mentioned earlier on, Orlando does not shoot the ball a ton from range. I expect a decent amount of drop coverage to force the issue. They will look to drive, and when that happens, Cleveland needs to funnel the driver towards the warm and inviting presence that is Jarrett Allen or Evan Mobley. Now, the obvious issue here is that their best drivers happen to occupy the front court. This could pull Evan Mobley or Jarrett Allen, or sometimes both, out of it, which in turn could limit Cleveland's chances to pack the paint. In the event that occurs, they will have to heavily lean upon their abilities to defend out on the perimeter or one-on-one. Both Paolo and Wagner can handle the rock, and as we've seen time and time again, both are fully capable of antagonizing you off the dribble. But with that being the case, Cleveland has the requisite tools to get the job done defensively. In the 4 regular season matchups between the 2 teams, the trio of Evan Mobley, Okoro, and Jarrett Allen spent considerable time defending Paolo. Mobley held him to 3 of 13, Okoro held him to 2 of 10, and Jarrett Allen wasn't far behind, limiting him to 4 of 12. The problem is, for as much as the Cavs would like to be able to keep at least one player from this trio glued to Banchero's hip, it often doesn't work out that way in the NBA. The player who in fact was often targeted during these matchups was none other than Georges Niang, who Banchero went 10 of 17 against. It's a switch-heavy league, and Orlando will look to force the switch if it is there. The Cavs must do what they can to avoid this from occurring too often. Number 4. Make some damn shots.
Shoot the J. Shoot it!
As simple as it sounds, the Cleveland Cavaliers must make their shots, especially from 3-point distance. This is something they struggled heavily with during last year's playoffs. The team as a whole shot a combined 44.9% from the field, including 32.7% from beyond the arc. We know the story. New York blitzed the lights of Darius Garland, and Donovan Mitchell clogged the paint and dared Cleveland's ancillary pieces to shoot the ball. It was a brilliant strategy that worked because the Cavs simply had no reliable shooters outside of the trio of Mitchell, Garland, and Caris LeVert. Former Cavalier Cedi Osman was as inconsistent as they come, Lamar Stevens wasn't a threat to step out on the perimeter, Dean Wade was injured and basically unplayable, Danny Green was way past his prime, Sam Merrill was a late season acquisition who hadn't yet earned the trust of JB Bickerstaff, and Isaac Okoro wasn't confident in his shot and was probably yanked too quickly by Bickerstaff. Things are much different now. The Cavs now feature more than a few reliable shot makers outside of their stars in the backcourt. For starters, they acquired swingman Max Strus from Miami. That move has already paid dividends, as Strus has shown to be much more than your typical volume shooter. He can handle the rock, function as an emergency point guard, he is probably the best rebounding option they can roll out at the 3, and he plays hard on the opposite end of the floor. All of this in addition to providing the starting unit with a solid amount of gravity as a shooter. He may have shot just 35.1% on his 3-point attempts this season, but make no mistake, opposing teams must respect his ability to knock down shots. The team also went out and acquired Georges Niang, a no-nonsense shooter who can provide floor spacing at the 4, something that was missed after the departure of Kevin Love last season. In addition to that, Sam Merrill has broken through, proving to be the Cavs' best pure shooter, completing 40.4% of his triples this year and looking like former Cavalier Kyle Korver in the process. He has to play in my opinion. It also cannot be discounted that Isaac Okoro and Dean Wade just experienced the best seasons of their young careers, looking as confident as ever. Ultimately, I say all of this to say that Cleveland must have a much better offensive showing this time around. It will be a challenge considering Orlando is the NBA's 3rd rated defense, but it's certainly possible given the newfound weapons. Matchups to keep an eye on. Playoff basketball can be heavily matchup driven, right down to the individual matchups between 2 opposing teams. Over the course of this series, there will be a few matchups that will be worth keeping an eye on. Some of them may prove more instrumental to victory than others. With that being the case, here are 3 matchups that could decide the fate of this first round matchup. Number 1, Jarrett Allen versus Wendell Carter Jr. This is one that I am very curious about, Cavs fans. Jarrett Allen has had a terrific season. He averaged a double-double for the third time in his career, put up a career high in points at 16.5 per game, and was one of just 9 players to average at least 16 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. Oh, and you may have a shot at making an all-defensive team as well. Allen has quietly put to bed many of the narratives that were written about him following last season's playoff performance, but he still must prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he can do it once the lights get brighter in the playoffs. Wendell Carter Jr. will present Allen with a much different challenge than the paint-oriented Mitchell Robinson did during last year's Knicks series. That would be due to his ability to legitimately space the floor. Carter Jr. is completing a career-best 37.4% of his triples this season on enough volume at 3.1 attempts per game to pull Allen outside of the paint. This could be a real issue for the Cavs if Carter gets hot. He shot a combined 3 of 5 from three-point distance while scoring in double figures against Cleveland in the 2 games he appeared in during the regular season series. This is certainly one to keep an eye on. Number 2. Jalen Suggs versus Donovan Mitchell. In the blue corner, we have Jalen Suggs, one of the most disruptive backcourt defenders in the entire league. In the red corner, or wine in this case, we have Donovan Mitchell, who when healthy is a borderline top 10 player in the NBA. Maybe even higher depending upon your preferences. This, my friends, could be a major factor in determining the outcome of this series. Suggs is legitimately one of the best defenders in the NBA. He has great positional size, has great instincts, and is always up for the challenge of defending a team's best perimeter threat. Suggs ranks 3rd among guards in defensive rating this season at 110.4, has the 9th most steals in the NBA, and is a likely candidate for an all-defensive nomination. He can make life difficult for opposing guards. When watching his film, a few things become crystal clear. He doesn't gamble often by overplaying the passing lanes. He's a pesky player to create offense against as he doesn't allow for much space. He can disrupt his matchup's handles due to a great understanding of how they will react to his defense. The third-year guard has an uncanny sense of when to swipe at the ball. Whether he's forcing a ball handler into a particular path only to use a little misdirection, or he's fighting through screens and staying down on pump fakes, he seems to know just when to attempt the swipe. And more often than not, it works. His forced turnovers generally lead to fast break opportunities for the Magic. That's easy offense. And while his on-ball defensive skills deserve a ton of credit, so too do his off-ball skills. Suggs is very good at the chase, meaning that if a team such as the Cavaliers is trying to run an action for their number 1 option, in this case Donovan Mitchell, Suggs will give chase. He is always engaged in tracking his prey to make sure that he has the best position possible needed to provide a proper contest of their shot. His screen navigation is top-notch, particularly when fighting over the commonly used pin down. But while Suggs is a terrific defender, Donovan Mitchell is a terrific scorer. He ranked 9th in the league this year in scoring, putting up an average of 26.6 points per game for Cleveland this year, and prior to missing time, was on track to make another All-NBA team. Spida is a true 3-level scorer, able to attack you at the rim, in the mid-range area, or from beyond the arc. And this season, he has proven that he can hurt you just as much as a facilitator, quickly reminding fans why he should be considered one of, if not the best combo guard in the entire association. His 6.1 assists per game were a career high, and his ability to step into the point guard role effectively and efficiently during the absence of Darius Garland was key to the Cavs staying afloat for a long stretch. Mitchell is eager and motivated to experience postseason success, by far the most glaring omission on his pretty stacked resume. According to Cleveland.com's Chris Fedor, Mitchell's goal is to make the Eastern Conference Finals or beyond. The question is, after dealing with illness, a nasal fracture, and knee tendonitis, does Mitchell have what it takes? Is he 100% or close to it? It certainly started to look that way after convincing performances over the Memphis Grizzlies and Indiana Pacers, in which he showed flashes of his pre-injury self, totaling 29 and 33 points respectively. The time off before the series is sure to help as well. One thing is for certain, Suggs versus Mitchell could be a make or break matchup. It's worth noting that Suggs held Mitchell to 8 of 19 during the regular season. Number 3, Evan Mobley versus Paolo Banchero. Look, there is no other way to put it. This is the matchup that the people want to see, especially with Isaac Okoro coming off the bench. Mobley and Banchero are sure to see a lot of one another in this series. Banchero became the youngest player in NBA history to lead his team in scoring, rebounding, and assists in the season. He also made his first All-Star team. The youngster is off to an incredible start. He has the Magic in the playoffs for the first time since 2020 and has a shot to lead them to their first series victory since 2010. he will likely give his best. After making an all-defensive team last year, the sky seemed to be the limit for Evan Mobley. Now, while he hasn't quite had the season many fans were expecting this year, he has still managed to improve in some areas nonetheless. The handle, the three-point shot, the rebounding, all took a step forward during the 2023-24 campaign, despite Mobley missing considerable time due to mid-season knee surgery and a subsequent ankle sprain. As mentioned earlier on, Mobley held Banchero to 3 of 13 from the field during the regular season when acting as his primary defender. He has a real chance to keep that going heading into the postseason. The key will be just how well Mobley is able to defend Banchero's barrage of drive to the rim. If drawn out to the perimeter, he must close out without biting on the pump fake. If defending said drive, he must use the rule of verticality to his advantage to contest Paolo at the rim. Offensively speaking, Mobley must continue his recent streak of aggressiveness in looking to establish himself in the painted area and pull the trigger from three-point distance when the space is provided to him.
Maxey goes to Mobley for a long-range jumper. Do you believe that? Oh, a confident stroke by Evan Mobley.
XFactors for Cleveland. When breaking this series down, there are a handful of possible X-Factors that could play a huge role in determining the victor of this series. Let's start with Caris LeVert. Caris LeVert, when he has it going, can be a catalyst for this Cavs team. He is capable of being a 3-level scorer, and his ability to make plays for others, whether that be off of driving kicks, dump-offs, or lobs at the rim, can be a real asset, especially in lineups without one of Garland or Mitchell on the floor. He is also capable of two-way play for stretches, and generally, when he has it going from an offensive standpoint, his defensive effort seems to be better. However, when he is off, he is truly off. When he struggles with a shot, whether that be at the rim, from the mid-range area, or three-point distance, it can truly leave the Cavs in a rough spot. He is their only real creator off the bench. The Cavs are going to need Caris LeVert to step up and in a consistent manner in order to win this series. He cannot disappear. Isaac Okoro. Isaac Okoro is yet another X-Factor. After being pulled from the starting lineup in favor of the aforementioned Caris LeVert in last year's playoffs, Okoro has responded with his best season yet. He has been attacking the rim more, as evidenced by his drives per game basically doubling, going from 1.8 to 3.8 this season. He is still providing all defensive level defense on the other end, and perhaps most importantly, he is shooting the ball more frequently, with more confidence than ever, and has just experienced his most efficient year yet in that regard, gaining 39.1% of his triples on 3.1 attempts per game. Isaac Okoro will be in JB Bickerstaff's initial playoff rotation, no doubt, but for how long and for how many minutes will likely boil down to his ability to space the floor. The New York Knicks put the blueprint out on how to best defend lineups that feature Isaac Okoro at the 2 or the 3. You clog the paint and dare the Cavs to shoot. It's a strategy that worked to perfection. The Orlando Magic are likely aware of this and will likely deploy similar tactics when he sees the floor. He must establish himself as a reliable threat from three-point distance if he is to stay on the floor. If he is able to do that, it bodes well for Cleveland, as they will be able to find a solid balance in some of their lineups where they want a good mixture of both defense and offense. Darius Garland. Look, a lot has been said about Garland this season, like a lot. Some people believe he doesn't fit. Others believe he's peaked already, and then there are those that believe that he's just experiencing a rough season due to myriad injuries. With all of this in mind, if there was ever a time for Garland to show up and show out, it would be this matchup. With Donovan Mitchell not operating at peak efficiency, and the mere fact that he will draw the bulk of the defense's attention, Garland may be called upon to perform at a higher level than he has this year. The former All-Star is still very capable. He just has to play confidently. He is a few months removed from the debilitating jaw injury he suffered at the hands of the Boston Celtics, but the effects of that have long since been felt. The weight he lost during that time played a role in his inability to finish at the rim and led to a frequent over-reliance on his perimeter shot. All of this being the case, a good series should quell any lingering questions surrounding the season he has had thus far. My last X factor for Cleveland is none other than offseason acquisition, Georges Niang. With no real timetable on Dean Wade, Niang figures to play a pretty substantial role off the bench for the Cavs over the course of this series. His ability to space the floor from the power forward position could provide a solid counter to potential paint clogging from the Orlando Magic. He may not have shot the ball above 40% for the 6th straight season, but at 37.6% on 4.8 attempts per game, Niang is a reliable shooter. He will draw front court defenders out of the paint, and if he can make his shots, he will become one of the team's most important reserves for this one. The other area in which he will be called upon is defensively. If the Cavs are going to justify him playing a considerable amount of minutes, he must hold his own defensively against a pretty athletic Orlando Magic outfit. Will he be able to do so against the likes of Paolo Banchero, the Wagners, Jonathan Isaac, and others? Time will tell. The one thing is for certain, Niang will be targeted. Though he isn't a Cleveland Cavalier, his impact could still make or break this series. Frankly speaking, Jonathan Isaac may very well be the NBA's best defensive weapon. He has immense size and length at 6'10" with a 7'4" wingspan, and displays a high level of athletic ability. Isaac was only available for 2 of the 4 regular season matchups between the Magic and Cavs, and in those 2 games he made his presence felt, finishing a plus 17 in one game and a plus 8 in the other, while providing Orlando a weapon capable of defending anyone 1 through 5. His positional versatility from a defensive standpoint is nearly unrivaled. He graded as the league's highest rated defender at 102.1, and had he played just 7 more games on the season, he likely would have been a shoo-in for first team all defense. He is a key factor to Orlando's half-court defense running as smoothly as it does. Now, I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't at least a little bit worried about just how effective a stopper he can be. With his size, I expect him to spend time defending whoever the Magic feel is hurting them the most throughout this series. And with Jalen Suggs being the tremendous guard defender that he is, the Magic have the ability to legitimately throw all defensive level defenders at both of Cleveland's star guards if necessary. And not only that, Isaac could even spend time going 1v1 with Evan Mobley if needed. It's truly a scary thought. This increases the need for players like Max Strus and Jarrett Allen to step up in this series. Closing thoughts. Getting the most out of the starting unit. With as up and down as this Cavaliers team has been this season, it can be hard at times to pinpoint just who they are as a team, how they best function, and what their real strengths as a unit are. At their core, they are a pick and roll heavy team with a real ability to space the floor at particular positions. The problem has often been that in the confines of the starting lineup, they do not provide a ton of perimeter spacing in the front court, or rather at the power forward and center positions. It's why the front office prioritized bringing in volume shooting this past offseason, accomplishing that by acquiring both Max Strus and Georges Niang, 2 of the NBA's better volume shooters. It's also part of the reason why some of their most effective lineups feature one of Jarrett Allen or Evan Mobley at the center position, with the other riding the pine, as opposed to both constantly sharing the court with one another. At the same time, their starting unit, comprised of Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, the aforementioned Strus, Mobley, and Allen, is still very capable and figured to see the most time together. That 5-man group sees an average of 13.1 minutes per game, the highest of all Cleveland lineups, and as a result scores the most points per game on average, putting up over 31.3 points per game together. They have a plus minus of 0.7 this year. The sample size is small though, as they have only played a grand total of 28 games together. That's less than 34.1% of the season. Cleveland is going to need its starters to show up and show out in a major way. This is a series in which I believe the front court pairing of Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen can dominate. I think they need to set the tone. But if they cannot, JB Bickerstaff will need to utilize the other weapons at his disposal off the bench. Sam Merrill, Marcus Morris, and even Tristan Thompson could all play an important role in this upcoming series if needed. It's on him to adjust when needed. Here's to hoping the Cavs can get the job done.